Greetings! Welcome to my channel. My name is Miles Ledoux. I'm an author, playwright, and director, and I like to compare Agatha Christie adaptations to the books they were based on. This is a really exciting year for me. I'm publishing a new mystery series, I'm recording an audiobook for the first time, and I'm directing 3 theater productions. One happened back in January. It was a staged reading of a play I wrote based on some of Agatha Christie's early stories featuring Mr. Quinn. I'm doing one in July, which we just started rehearsing for. It's Agatha Christie's one-act play, The Patient, and the last one is going to be in October, and it's actually 2 plays. One is a staged version of Christie's radio play, Yellow Iris, and the second is a play that I wrote based on the Miss Marple story, The Thumb Mark of St. Peter. As far as I am able, I'm going to keep posting new videos on this channel in my Agatha Christie playlist at least once a month. So, without further ado, Towards Zero. First published in 1944. I did a video a few years ago comparing the book to the 2007 adaptation that added Miss Marple. That video was taken down by YouTube along with a few others, and it is the only one that I have not managed to get back up. A new adaptation of Towards Zero was released 1 month ago by the BBC, featuring Angelica Houston. Let's dive in. The book sets up the framework of the novel by having Mr. Treves, a retired lawyer, tell us that murder is the 0 hour, the end of the countdown, and so the real story surrounding it is not what happens afterward, but before. Then we're introduced to several different characters, knowing, thanks to Treves, that eventually these separate storylines will converge, and the end result will be a murder or murder attempt. We have till the end of the book to figure out who's going to try to off whom. We have an attempted suicide who, while recovering, is told that he's going to be needed for something important in the future. We have a policeman who catches his teenage daughter in a lie about some thefts, except she's not lying about her innocence, she's lying about her guilt. And then we have the main group of suspects. Quick rundown. Neville Strange, tennis player, handsome celebrity, popular, kinda stupid. Lady Tressilian, Neville's guardian, rich old lady, mostly stays in bed. Kay Strange, Neville's wife. Everybody hates her for stealing him away from Audrey Strange, his ex-wife. Ted Latimer has a crush on Kay. Mary Alden, Lady Tressilian's companion. Thomas Royd is a little more complicated, but he's a friend of the family. Neville has the brilliant idea of bringing his new wife to visit Lady Tressilian at the same time as his ex. Predictably, fireworks ensue. Mr. Treves joins the house party one night as a distinguished guest, and he hints that he recognizes one of them as a child who once got away with murder. That child, now grown up, kills Treves by planting an out-of-order sign on an elevator, triggering a heart attack when he tries to take the stairs. Shortly afterward, Neville has a fight with Lady Tressilian. He wants to leave Kay and go back to Audrey. Lady Tressilian threatens to cut him out of her will. The next morning, she's found bludgeoned to death. Let's see how the new film does up to this point. Towards Zero is a comparatively short book that they adapted into a 3-hour miniseries, so it's not surprising that they give us a ton of backstory. They have a whole sequence detailing the trial in which Audrey divorces Neville. It ends with Neville confessing, losing the trial, and still being Mr. Popular. So as far as book accuracy goes, I'm happy so far. And in order to explain just why I'm happy, I'm going to have to talk about the solution earlier than I usually do. So I hope you saw the spoiler warning. Neville is the killer. You spend the whole book thinking he's easy to manipulate, whether it's by Kay or by Audrey or someone else, when really, the whole time, he's the one doing the manipulating. This works because Neville has this carefully built facade of stubborn cluelessness that masks his narcissism and his penchant for violent retaliation. Which is why the Miss Marple version made me smack my head against the wall, because that Neville was too slick and suave. He never came off as someone who's easy to mess with. The ideal Towards Zero adaptation would have a Neville resembling on the surface Thomas Hayden Church's character in the movie Sideways, or the kid in that Britney Snow movie.
Jennifer, this is Jill, my other girlfriend. I think we can make this work.
This new version of Neville isn't quite John Tucker, but he gives us just enough reasons to believe he might be cleverly set up. So, first hurdle cleared. The story quickly develops a film noir feel, not quite as dark as a Sarah Phelps script, but still gritty, very slow burn. Kay is by far the most accurate character to her book counterpart. She's used to getting her own way and throws a tantrum when she doesn't. The film adds another layer wherein she's a con artist and Neville was her mark, but to her surprise, she genuinely fell in love with him. I really liked this addition. It deepened the character without throwing the story off balance. It made it richer. This is what all adaptations should do. Kay's partner in crime is a pimp named Louis Morel, who serves as a replacement for Ted Latimer, though as characters they're totally dissimilar. Treves is now the family lawyer instead of a criminal lawyer. We have a brand new character named Arthur MacDonald, Neville's footman and bodyguard, though later he's going to turn out to be the illegitimate son of Lady Tressilian's late husband, so basically a red herring. No complaints or objections from me. This edition works fine. Recurring Agatha Christie character Superintendent Battle is left out, again, leaving us with Inspector Leach, who, like another character they left out, attempts to commit suicide but miraculously survives. In the Christie short story The Man from the Sea, the main character tries to convince someone not to take their own life, because someday they might be needed at a certain place and time, and without them something terrible might occur. Toward Zero is basically that prediction played out to completion, for this character is ultimately the one who saves the day. It kind of makes sense to assign this character arc to the police detective, though I think the film took a risk by doing so. It might have been looked at as a cheap way of adding melodrama, but between the casting and the direction, I think they pulled it off. Mary is mostly the same as in the book, though they added more tension between her and Lady Tressilian, making Mary a stronger suspect. The source of that tension is Thomas Royd, who's had a complete character makeover. He's now the black sheep of the family. Why, you ask? In the book, Treves tells of a case where one child accidentally shot another with a bow and arrow. He hints that that child is now in the room, all grown up. This is why the murderer kills him, though in the film this whole bit is skipped. Thomas, Film Thomas, is an outcast because he accused Neville of deliberately shooting his childhood friend with an arrow and killing him. Why? Why? So, two things. One, this little side puzzle, while dark, is part of what made the book so much fun. Treves mentions that the killer child had a physical peculiarity, which he would always remember and use to identify them. Well, each of the suspects has what could be considered a peculiarity, so it's fun to guess which one he was talking about. Two, in a film adaptation, an early reveal of a clue that incriminates the killer is a very risky move. Sometimes it works, but most of the time it's a colossal error because it weakens the payoff. In this case, there's only one thing they could have done to make it work. Part of Neville's plan is that he frames himself for Lady Tressilian's murder, making it look as if someone took advantage of the fight Neville just had with his aunt, which he'd staged, and killed her right then because Neville was a convenient scapegoat. Revealing Neville as the child who shot and killed his friend would have been okay if they had somehow made this part of the evidence against him, building up a seemingly strong case before it got shot down. But instead, the case against him is so flimsy it falls apart on its own. So, major disappointment. What was worse, though, one of my favorite scenes from any Agatha Christie novel is early on in this book, where Superintendent Battle is called to his daughter's school because she's confessed to stealing. Turns out his daughter, Sylvia, is completely innocent, though she knew everyone suspected her and the pressure made her confess. It made me a huge fan of the character Battle, the way he figured it out and put the headmistress and her pseudo-psychology in her place. In the film, Sylvia enters the story as Treves's ward, and they set it up the same way. He's called to her school because she's been accused of theft, and I was so excited. I was about to see my favorite scene play out. And they just skip it. Because in the film, Sylvia really is a thief. And eventually that's how she finds some clues that Inspector Leach would have missed. In the second half of the book, after Neville becomes suspect number one and is then cleared by a freak coincidental alibi, which he had engineered, the evidence starts to build up against Audrey, who we've been led to believe has Neville in the palm of her hand. She killed Lady Tressilian for the inheritance and framed her ex-husband as payback for leaving her. Audrey tries to commit suicide, but is prevented by the man who attempted suicide at this same spot. He sees that Audrey is terrified out of her mind, so he helps Battle prove that she's innocent. It turns out Neville did not leave Audrey. Audrey left him for Thomas Royd's brother, except that he was killed in a freak accident. That accident, it's implied, was arranged by Neville, who then came up with this elaborate plan to murder Audrey by getting her hanged for a crime she didn't commit. The first big change in the film is that Treves dies after Lady Tressilian. Neville couldn't have predicted Arthur getting arrested, so he had to murder another person to keep the investigation going. Some evidence does pile up against Neville, but it's not nearly as damning, particularly because Neville did not have a fight with Lady Tressilian. Or rather, he did, but his entire side of the argument was, "Yes, Aunt." His alibi is changed from a clever use of a hook and bell rope to just having a conversation with the housekeeper, which I guess is fine, but what was wrong with the way Christie wrote it? Audrey does not confess to the murder, as she does in the book, for the same reason as Battle's daughter, because the case against her isn't strong enough either. The police aren't sure whether the target of the frame-up is Neville or Audrey or both of them, but they shouldn't be aware at all that anyone other than Lady Tressilian is the target. That's the driving force behind the denouement, an expectation of the Agatha Christie subgenre. If you're going to reveal something early, you better damn well have plenty to reveal at the climax, or else you make it an unsatisfying payoff. They've already taken out a lot of hints that would have been paid off, like saying the killer must be left-handed, which Audrey is, but then it turns out Neville used his backhand, which in tennis is his strength.
Powerful forehand from Strange.
I did like one scene where Neville subtly hinted that it was not he, but Audrey, who shot the bow and arrow, and that he covered up for her. But then that leads nowhere. So, since the film leaves out Thomas's brother, what's the big secret that gets revealed at the end? It's that Audrey set Neville up to be publicly humiliated for cheating on her. That's what he's getting back at her for, even though he came out of that mess on top. Does not compute. What really bothers me, though, is how this changes Audrey as a character. Instead of escaping Neville because she feared for her life, or because she realized he was controlling her, she left him for her pride. This is not a judgment on the character, this is a judgment on the writing choice, because for a story motivation, it's much less profound. Though at least it explains something I wondered throughout the whole film. If she was terrified of him, why was Audrey allowing Neville to seduce her? Was she pretending to be seduced? In the end, were we going to find out she was giving in to him out of fear and just putting on a really good performance? That might have made for a worthy twist. But no, she's just been pretty much flattened as a character. And the stakes have been diminished along with her. She's lost everything that drew us to her as a character. Mystery, subtlety, intelligence, her struggle to be brave, and everything else that made us have empathy for her. Basically, she's not someone we care about anymore. The original story was about a woman escaping male dominance and possessiveness. The film changed it to something more petty. It's pretty much just rich people being pricks to each other. Who cares? The story doesn't say anything anymore about the nature of evil. In fact, it made me realize one big change right at the beginning that I'd missed. Book Neville was not a cheater. He only pretended to be. He was horrible in all sorts of other ways, but he was faithful. I imagine that's how he was able to convince himself that he was the good guy. So, do I recommend the film? I mean, sure, I guess. I mean, the cast is great. It was well directed. It nailed the tension better than any other adaptation I've seen. It's a good film. It's just, there were so many missed opportunities, so many downgrades. Maybe someday I'll watch it again, and with fewer expectations I'll be less let down. But for today, it's just not Agatha Christie enough for me. When does the book come into the public domain? 2040. Thank you all for watching. Please check out my website, ledouxmysteries.com, and I'll see you next month.